Hey, so some of you out there are thinking, wait a minute, I don't know music theory and I don't play piano. I didn't start learning lessons when I was 3 years old on guitar, or drums, or saxophone, or flute, or whatever. That's fine. Anybody here who is nervous or too intimidated about writing and producing, like, I don't know that much about music, I'm not a great player on any instrument, guess what? I'm a professional hack, so I'm okay at a handful of instruments. I'm not an expert in any of them. And one of my closest friends and most successful producers alive can't even play a single instrument. Anybody that is slightly intimidated by that, look, the fine folks at Learn Monthly have come up with an introduction to music theory course. It's like 30, 40 minutes. It's very short. I'm not the best person to teach this because, quite frankly, 90% of the time, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just finding chords and notes and sounds that sound good. So for anybody that wants it, you can watch it right now and start.
In this lesson, we're going to cover all the fundamentals that you need to know about music theory to be successful in this class. Now, you might be wondering, why do I need to know music theory? That sounds technical or theoretical. I just want to write some songs. And in some cases, you're right. There are some technical, theoretical stuff in the music theory category, but we're not going to be touching those today. Instead, we're just going to be talking about the few practical things that you need to know to start writing great songs right off the bat. And if you've been making music for a while or play an instrument, you can probably skip this video and start in on day one of the class with your instructor. But if you're new to making music and you want to get up to speed, starting to write songs as fast as possible, then this lesson is going to give you all the basic things that you need to know to start writing hit songs. And then, of course, on day one of the class, your instructor is going to show you how to take these building blocks and actually convert them into great songs. So we're not going to be talking about making amazing songs here. We're going to be covering the building blocks. And then on day one of the class, your instructor is going to take those building blocks and help you transform them into something really special. Okay, so what are we going to cover? Well, we're going to start all the way at the beginning with just the names of the notes. And then we're going to take that to chord progressions and writing melodies and bass lines and inversions and a couple of other things, right? So by the end of this, you'll be able to sit down at a piano and say, I want to write a song. And then you'll just, right? You'll be able to start playing chords. You'll start being able to sing. I can't promise that you'll be a great singer after this lesson, but I can promise you that you'll be able to sit at the piano and write interesting progressions of chords that you can sing over, that you can make songs to, and it's really not that hard. So let's jump in from the beginning and talk about notes. So in Western music, in pop music, there are only 12 notes, and they repeat up and down the keyboard. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we repeat. Obviously, this note is higher and this note is lower, but these are the same note and they're called an octave. And we'll talk about what they're actually called. Like, you'll see their names are the same when we start giving the notes names. Okay, so we only have these 12 notes, and all music is just combinations of these notes put together. Chords are just multiple notes played at the same time. Melodies are just, notes that go together played in succession. Bass lines. Again, so all we need to know are just, what are these 12 notes and how do we piece them together using some basic algorithms, some basic formulas, and then you can start writing some songs. So let's give these notes names and then we'll get onto the sort of fun stuff. All right. So these 12 notes are named A through G. So let's look at these white keys. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then back to A. Now, typically, when people are learning music, they think about notes relative to that note there, C. So we're going to also think relative to C. And the way to remember where C is on the keyboard is just think, okay, we have these two black notes, and C is to the left of those two black notes. So up here, that's a C, that's a C, that's a C, and maybe, I don't know if you could see, but that is also a C, right? So we have, those are all C to the left of those black notes. And so once you know C, you can count up the rest, right? So we have D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then repeat, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And those two Cs, again, are called an octave. Okay, so those are the white notes. Now we have the black notes. And the black notes we call either by sharp or flat. Sharp means one higher than, and flat means one lower than. So for example, take that note. That is a G. One higher than G, so G sharp. That's a G sharp right there. So G sharp is one higher than G, is a G sharp. Back to G. Okay, so flat is one lower, so that's a G flat. Now you'll notice that some notes, based on this naming scheme, have two names. And you can use these names interchangeably. Again, we just give the notes names so it's easier to talk about them. So you'll notice like this note here, it's one lower than G, but it's also one higher than F. So one higher than F makes it an F sharp. One lower than G makes it a G flat. It's the same note, it's different names. If you look up songs that you love, maybe they'll say play an F sharp chord or play a G flat chord. It's the same chord. And again, these notes are just to help us refer to the different notes. In any case, sharp, one higher, flat, one lower. So let's practice naming some of these notes. What's that note there? So we'll start at C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So it is one lower than B, so it's flat is one lower, so that's a B flat. Or how about this note? Okay, so we have C, D, E, so that's a E flat. Or we can go C, D, one higher than D is a D sharp. Let's do one more. How about that note there? Well, that's a C, one higher than C, C sharp, or one lower than D, D flat. So that's all there is to it. Start on C, count up, sharp one higher, flat one lower. If you're new to giving the notes names, I would encourage you right now to pause the video, pick out some random notes on the keyboard, and try to figure out what the name of that note is. Once you can name all the notes, we're ready to start combining those notes together into chords. And again, chords are what make up sort of that backbone of writing songs. So if you can play chords, you could start singing on top of that and you can start making a whole song. And again, chords are just combinations of notes. Now, for this class, or at least for right now, and to be honest, in 95% of pop music, there are only two kinds of chords that you need to know. And you've probably heard these before. You have major chords and minor chords. Major chords sound happy, and minor chords sound sad. So right now we're going to talk about how do we find major chords and minor chords for every note. So every note that you've given a name has a corresponding major chord and has a corresponding minor chord. And you'll notice if you look up, let's say, the chord progression to your favorite song, to any song, let's say I'm Yours by Jason Mraz. You'll see the chord and it'll say, C major, so that's a major chord corresponding to C, G major, so that's a major chord corresponding to G, A minor, so that's a minor chord corresponding to A, and then F major, that's a F, a major chord corresponding to F. Now that might sound complicated, but it's really not. Basically, every note, you can make a major chord and a minor chord, and then you just put it all together and you have a chord progression, and then you have songs. So how do we find, first let's do major chords. So there's a very simple formula to make a major chord, and that is 4 and then 3. So major chord is 4 and then 3. What does that mean? Well, let's say we want to play a C major chord. So we first find the note C, then we count up 4 notes, and then we count up 3 notes, so 4 and 3. So we don't count this one, we start here, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3, 1, 2, 3. So 4, then 3, and we have a C major chord. Let's try this note here, so that's a E flat. Let's make an E flat major chord. So again, 4 and then 3 is major, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that's an E flat major chord. Again, we're not counting, when we start here and then we count from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Let's try another one. How about that note there? So that's an F sharp. So let's make an F sharp major chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 3 is a major chord. Okay, so that's how you make major chords. And you can do this again with every note. So if you want to make an A major chord, go to A, then do 4, then 3. If you want to make a D major chord, start on D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, there we go. So you can do this with any note and find any major chord across the entire piano. And then minor chords are just the reverse. So instead of going 4 and then 3, we go 3 and then 4. So let's do a C minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just count that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. C minor. Let's do this. So that's a B flat. So let's do a B flat minor. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, minor is 3 and then 4. Let's do one more. How about that note there? So what's that? That is an E. So let's do a E minor chord. So we have 3 and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's how you find major and minor chords. 4 and then 3, and then 3 and then 4. And that's pretty much it. You're basically ready to start writing songs. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Before we do, if you've never made chords before, I challenge you to pause the video, pick out some random chords in your mind. So pick a note, F sharp, and then F sharp minor, or F sharp major, or D flat major, or D flat minor, and go around to different notes and try to come up with the major and minor chords. Again, it's just 4 and then 3, starting on whatever note you call the chord by. So if it's a F chord, you start on F, 4, then 3. All right, if you can now make any major or any minor chord on any note, you can play 95, 98, 99% of all of your favorite songs. So let's go back to that example of I'm Yours by Jason Mraz, which, we could go to Google, we could type in I'm Yours chords, and let's say that the chords we find are C major, G major, A minor, and F. So how do we find that progression? Well, we go C major, so we start on C. We count up 4 and then 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. C major. And then G major, so start on G, count up 4, then 3, because it's major. 1, 2, 3, 4. G major. A minor is 3, then 4, starting on A. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then F major, starting on F, 4, then 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So now we have cool. So you can basically play any of your favorite songs now, knowing the names of the notes, and then 4, then 3, or 3, then 4 for major and minor, because almost all your songs are just going to use major chords and minor chords. Now you might be asking, okay, cool, I can play my favorite songs, but I want to write songs. I want to write brand new songs. And here's a little bit of a secret. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to come up with new progressions and all of that in just a couple minutes. But the real secret is that most songs, especially pop songs, reuse the same few chords over and over again, the same chord progressions over and over again, because there's not that many options. And so almost every musician, I would dare to say every musician that starts writing their own songs does it first based on songs that they like. So they'll take a song like I'm Yours, and they'll take those same chords, but they'll write their own melody on top. So instead of doing da da dun dun dun, like we don't need to do that. We can do something totally different. So we go na 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 na, or whatever we want, right? So you can steal the chords from any song that exists that you like, and you can start writing your own songs on top. But you might say, okay, I don't want to steal the chords, even though your instructor does this, every musician does this, songwriters do this. It is a very normal thing. But maybe you say, I want to still come up with something original and cool. That's fine. You can also learn from songs that you like what chords go well together. So maybe you say, okay, we have C major, G major, A minor, F. I don't want to play them in that order, but I know those chords sound good together. So maybe I'll just take those chords and remix them a little bit, play them in a different order. So maybe we'll do F major, G major, A minor, C. So let's do... I can't wait to not to wait to making them your... So again, you can just take those chords and then start singing, and then all of a sudden you have an actual song, right? I mean, that's all songwriting is. It's just taking some chord progressions and singing on top. So that's how you can use just the names and the notes and the progressions of your favorite songs to start writing songs of your own. Let's just do one more example. Let's say we look up another one of our favorite songs and we find that the chords are A flat major, B flat minor, and D flat major. So let's find those chords. That's an A flat. So let's go major, so 4 then 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we have B flat minor, so B flat, 3 and then 4 because it's minor, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then D flat, so major, so 4 then 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So we have... I'm actually going to take all of this up an octave so it's a little bit easier to hear. So again, I'm just moving up an octave. All right, and then again, let's say that's one of our favorite songs, the progression. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. So we can take that progression and start writing our own melodies on top, or again, we can switch up the order. So maybe we want to do B flat minor, D flat major, A flat major. So we have... So now it's kind of a different song. You can do me rocking down, I can make it underturned. And so there you go, right? So you can just take chords from your favorite songs, use the names of the notes, 4 then 3, 3 then 4 for major minor, remix the chords if you want, and you're a songwriter. So if you're brand new to music and all you know is how to do this, which is find the chords to your favorite songs, remix them, play around, you can start writing songs. This is how almost everybody starts writing songs. And if this is all you know going into day one of the class, you're good. You'll be able to follow along. You'll be able to write songs. This is enough. Now, you might be wondering, I'm kind of curious to know why these chords sound good together, or how do I play melodies on top of these chords, or maybe bass lines? What's that about? Well, let's talk a little bit about one more ingredient that if you add it to your quiver of tools, that you'll be able to take what we just did and just move it up one more notch. So, and I'm going to say it, and it's going to sound sort of boring, and it's going to bring you back to your piano lessons when you're 8 years old, but it's the major scale, right? If you can learn how to play the major scale, and I'm going to tell you in a second, it's just another pattern like 4 then 3, really easy, no big deal. You don't have to memorize anything except for what I'm about to tell you, which is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We'll get to that in a second. But if you can learn that, not only will you be able to play your favorite songs, but you'll understand how to figure out what key they're in. We'll talk about that. You'll understand how to write your own chord progressions from scratch. You'll understand how to take chords and write some melodies on top, some bass lines. If you can do major chords plus what we just did, that's way more than enough to be a hit songwriter. That's the genuine truth. So let's talk about major scales. And again, this is not about playing the scales perfectly like we're in piano class. It's not what we care about. What we care about is just understanding what notes go well together. And the major scale is sort of a cheat code that says, hey, look at me. These notes are the notes that sound nice together. And some of these other notes, like, or some of these other notes don't sound as good with this grouping of notes, so don't play those. So a major scale basically just tells us, play these notes together and don't play these ones. And obviously, there's always times you can break the rules, but again, 95% of songs stick to these rules. They sound great. You can use these rules and you'll also sound great. So just trust me when I say this major scale stuff is really easy. It's not boring, and it's going to help you unlock some brand new skills as a songwriter. So let's figure out how to play a major scale. I teased it before, and what I teased was this new formula that we need to know, which is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. What does that mean? What's whole and what's half? Well, in music, as you saw with the major and minor chords, it's all about the relationships between notes. And the smallest units of relationships between notes are called half steps or whole steps. Half step is just the separation of two keys. So this one to this one, so a C to a C sharp, and that's a half step. C to D, C sharp to D, that's a half step, half step, half step, half step. So that's just one key away. One key away is a half step. Then we have a whole step, which is just two half steps put together. So two keys away. So 1, 2, whole step. That's a whole step. That's a whole step. So half steps are just one key away, whole steps are two keys away. So if the formula for a major scale is whole step, half step, or whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, it's really just 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. Okay, so let's try that. So let's take the C major scale. Let's start on C, and let's do whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So we have whole, so that's 2, 1, whole, another whole, half, just one, whole, whole, 1, 2, another whole, and then half. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? So 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. And that's a major scale, the C major scale. Let's try one on E flat. So whole, whole, half, so it's 2, 2, 1, whole, 2, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So we have, that's the E flat major scale. Let's do one more. We have an F sharp, so we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that's it. That's how to find major scales. Now, once you know a major scale, there's a lot of good stuff that you can do. Before we get to that though, if you've never played a major scale before, pause the video. I challenge you to pick some random notes. And again, just use the formula whole, whole, half. So 2, 2, 1, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Apply that formula. Again, a whole step is 2, a half step is 1, and see if you can find major scales, right? So, or pause the video, find some major scales, and once you feel confident about finding your major scales, let's talk about what we can actually do with major scales, because it's really powerful. Okay, so we know how to find our major scales now. And so now the question is, what can we do with these major scales? Well, the first thing we can do is we can actually find original chord progressions just based on these major scales. So before we learned how to find chord progressions by borrowing or stealing chords from our favorite songs. Now we can actually find our own chord progressions using the major scale. And the way to do that is to recognize that every note in the major scale has a corresponding chord in that scale. So that might sound like a sort of complicated sentence, but all it really means is take the C major scale. Each of these notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, they all have a corresponding 3-note chord. And the way to find the chords for each of the notes in the scale is to combine those notes of the scale using this one final formula, which is play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. So play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note. So that's a C major chord. So that's a C chord in the key of C using the C major scale. We started on C. Let's go to D. So D is in the C major scale. So using the notes, again, just from the major chord, let's find the D chord in the C major scale. So we have play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. E, play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. F, G, A, B, and C. And when we work in the major scale and we find chords in this way, we usually use their number names, not their letter names. So, for example, in C we call the one note because it's the first note of the scale. Not surprisingly, D is 2, then E is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. So the C major chord is just the 1 chord. The D chord is the 2 chord. 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord, and back to 1. And you've probably heard this terminology used before, even if you don't realize it. If you know the song Hallelujah, there's a part that goes, and it goes like this: the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, and the major lift. And the cool thing about those lyrics is it's literally describing the chords that are being played. So in the case of C major, the 4th chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, is an F major. The 5th is a G. So when it says the 4th, the 5th, you're actually playing the 4th and 5th chords, which is pretty cool. So anyway, we can refer to these as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. And there's something you have to know, which is in any major scale. So if we did E flat, and we found those chords by going play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. Right? Same process, using just the notes from that scale, playing, skipping, playing, skipping, playing. What you need to know is that in every major scale, which is also in every key, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, or in the case of C, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord, they're always major, and the 2 chord, the 3 chord, and the 6 chord are always minor. So in the case of C, the 1 chord is major, and we can check that using our formula. We have C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So 4 then 3 is major. We said the 2 chord is minor. Let's check it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a D minor chord. E minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. F major, G major, A minor. So the 1, the 4, and the 5 are always major, and the 2, the 3, and the 6 are always minor. The 7 is diminished. If you look, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but we almost never use that chord. So let's not worry about that. We just have 1, 4, 5 major, 2, 3, 6 minor. So now here's a whole new way to come up with chord progressions. Instead of taking chords from your favorite song, you can instead come up with chord progressions based on the major scale. So pick any note, let's say F. Let's find the F major scale, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And then let's find the chords. So it's play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note, play. Same thing, same thing. And again, we know that the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are going to be major. The 2, the 3, and the 6 are going to be minor. And so now we can do something interesting where we just take random numbers from 1 to 6 and let's make something up. Let's do 6, 5, 4, 3. Nothing too inspired, not a super common chord progression, but if you just take random numbers and then find in the key of F, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then 5, 4, 3. And now we have a song, sort of sounds like maybe a Phineas song or something like that, where we have. I can be waking up, never know. I can go, never go, where you go. So we just picked random numbers. Let's try something else. Let's do 1, 2, 5, 4. So again in F, 1, 2, which is minor. Then what do we say? 5, 4. I can say you may go never know. I can say you know. All right, let's try something in a different key. Let's do something kind of different. Let's do D flat or C sharp. And let's try, again, random numbers. Let's do 4, 5, 4, 5, 3, 4, let's say. So let's first find the notes in the major scale. So again, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So right, so that's 1 through 6. And then what do we say? We said 4, 5, 3. So there's another progression. Or maybe we don't start on 1. Maybe we do, well, let's try something. Yeah, let's do 4, 1, 6, 5. And we'll do it in the key of E this time. So 4 is 1, 2, 3. So we have A to E, 6. There we go. 6 is minor, 5. Okay, whoops, let's try that again. Say what will you never go? I know I'll never go. So again, we can take our major scale in any key, any major scale, find the chords, pick random numbers, and see what sounds good to us. And there's another method for writing chord progressions. But there's actually more we can do with the major scale now that we have it. Before we get to that though, I challenge you once again, pause the video, pick a random key, make the major scale, find the chords, pick some random numbers, and see if you can make some new chord progressions of your very own. Okay, so if you can make the chord progressions, then let's talk about melodies. So if you can write the chords, you might also want to play some melodies on top. So how do we play melodies? And when you're writing songs, sometimes it's going to be with your voice. You're going to just sing the melodies. And sometimes you're going to be playing them with a different instrument, a lead instrument, a guitar or piano, or who knows, some sort of synth. The way to write melodies is really easy. Once you know, right, so let's say we come up with a chord progression in the key of G, which is, again, using the G major scale. Then, over that chord progression, we know that all those notes in G are going to sound great. So you can start writing melodies using the major scale over the chord progressions you write in that major scale. Sometimes, though, there are notes in the major scale that might not sound quite as good as some of the other notes. So let's take this chord progression again. I play that very intentionally so it sounds nice, but there are some times maybe like, or, so there's actually a way to simplify the major scale even further to make sure that every note you play sounds great over the chord progressions you're playing. And we're going to use something called the pentatonic scale. So penta means 5, which means we take our major scale, which is 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to G. So 7 notes, and we're going to reduce it to 5. And the way we do that is we take away the 4th note and we take away the 7th note. So in the case of, let's start with C. In the case of C, we have the C major scale. Take away the 4th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're left with these. And those notes are going to sound really good over all the chords in C. So you can see that if you're just playing the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, that's going to make some really nice melodies over the chords you're playing. So let's try something in a key maybe we're less familiar with. Let's go to A flat major, and then play that chord progression we were playing a handful of minutes ago. A flat major, B flat minor, D flat major. So let's find the pentatonic scale using the major scale. So with the major scale goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take away the 4 and 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So let's try that. So we don't need to be the best piano players. We'll talk about, your instructor will talk later in the class about using music software to fix mistakes and all of that. What's important right now is understanding what the notes are. And maybe you don't yet have the coordination even to play the chords in one hand and play the melodies in another hand. And you don't need that coordination. You can record the chords into your music software, into your DAW, play the chords on top. Take it piece by piece. So this is not about being able, this is not a performance class. It's not being a classical piano, being able to do all these fancy things with both your hands at the same time. This is just about knowing which notes sound nice over which chords. And then on the flip side, we have bass notes, bass lines. When you're composing, arranging songs, you might want to have bass parts. It's pretty common to have bass parts. And writing bass parts is really easy. In fact, the most common way of doing it is just taking that root note of the chord. So again, the root note is just the name of the chord, the note in the name. So a C major chord, the root note is a C. And an F major chord, the root note is an F. And just playing those root notes lower underneath the chord. So if we have C, F, A minor, G, just play the roots underneath as a bass line. Right there's our bass line, just the root notes. And then I did this little one, a nice little flourish. Where are those notes coming from? Well, they're actually coming right from the pentatonic scale again, right? So in C, that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So we can add a little bit of color, a little bit of flavor by using some of those notes between those root notes. Right, so you can see that we can start spicing it up, but for the most part, we don't even need to get that spicy. We can just play those root notes. And we have a bass line. So again, using the major scale, take away the fourth, take away the seventh, you have the pentatonic scale, play some nice melodies. Take the root notes from the chords, and maybe some pentatonic notes as well, and you can play some bass lines. And again, from the major scale, we can find chords, we can come up with our own progressions, and that's a real full toolkit in terms of playing, making music. So I think this is a good place to stop, especially if you're brand new. I would say this is plenty, more than plenty. We've already gone way past what you need. For those that are more advanced, I just want to show one more thing, and it's called inversions. And again, if you're a beginner, this might be one extra piece of information that you probably don't need. But if you're more advanced and you want your chord progressions to sound a tiny bit smoother, knowing how to play inversions might be that one thing to take you to the next level. So let's talk about inversions. An inversion is just a fancy name for saying, play that chord a little bit differently. So here's the secret. That's a C major chord. It uses the note C, it uses the note E, and it uses the note G. C, E, G, C major. The secret is that you don't have to play C, E, and G in this order for it to be a C major chord. So if you played E, G, C, that's a C major chord. If you played G, C, E, that's a C major. those are all C major chords. So you can think about it as like, here's our C major, take this C, pop it up an octave. Now we have that's a C major, take this E, pop it up an octave here. So, and we have another C major. So you can play major chords, or even minor chords too. As long as the same 3 notes are being played, you can play them in any way. This is a C major chord. If we played G, E, and C, so we really spread them out. It has a different feel to it, but it's also a C major chord. So why should you care? Why do inversions matter? Why would I want to flip around the notes? And I think a big part of it is making your chord progression sound a bit smoother. So let's take a chord progression we looked at a little while ago. C major, A minor, F, and G. This is like the doo-wop chord progression. Or heart and soul, if you've heard that, right? Common chord progression. And you'll notice that when we're playing this progression, so C, then we want to go to A minor, we move our entire hand all the way down. And we want to play F major, we move our hand all the way down, and then G. But there are different ways to play this, smoother ways to play this. And so let's see what that might look like. So let's start back at C, and let's do an inversion. So let's take this C and bring it up here. So maybe we have this C to start. And now we want to move to an A minor, which again is A, C, and E. So we need the notes A, C, and E from our C chord. Well, we notice in C, we already have our E, and we already have our C. Here's the A, and we're just one away. So to get from C to A minor using inversions, we just have to move this G up to an A. So now we go. So we went from here, C, E, G, A, C, E. They share C and E, so we can just keep those notes the same and just move that middle note. Okay, now in our chord progression, we had an F, right? So we went. An F uses F, A, and C. So we need F, A, and C. Well, we see we have an A already. We already have a C, so we just need to go from E to F. So look at this smooth transition. So now our chord progression goes. And then to get to G, we either have to move everything up or some down, like that. So we went from this to something a little bit smoother. And you'll hear it better without the bass. Ready? So we went from this to this. So if that was confusing, then completely forget about inversions. Practice everything else. If you are a little bit further along and you want to practice making your chord progressions a little bit smoother, remember that as long as the notes are the same, you can play them in any order. And that can give you some different sounds, some different feels for your chord progressions. Because like we said, there are only so many chords, 1 through 6 really, and there's only so many chord progressions that people use. And so one way of making your chord progression sound different than other people's chord progressions is by trying to use inversions to make your chords and your changes sound a little bit different. So if you are more experienced, play around with that. See if you can make your chord progressions that might be common sound a little bit special for your particular song. And that's it. That is legitimately everything you need to know, and probably way more than you need to know to start writing great songs, and you're going to start doing that on day 1 of the class. So again, to recap, we know the names of the notes. That's C, D, E, F, G, A. Sharp, 1 higher, flat, 1 lower. We know how to use 4 then 3, 3 and 4 to make major chords and minor chords, how to borrow or steal chords from our favorite songs to remix those chords. We have our songs, songs of our own. We could write our own melodies on top of that. We can use the major scale formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, to find major scales. From the major scales, we can find the chords in the scale by going play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. To find all those, we have 1, 4, and 5 that are major, 2, 3, and 6 that are minor. Pick random numbers, make the chords, pentatonic scale, remove the 4 and the 7, beautiful melodies, bass notes, playing the root note or some pentatonic notes maybe, and inversions to make sort of smoother, different sounding chords using those same notes. So that's it. I hope you learn something. I hope you practice before class starts and try out your hand. Maybe you write a few little songs or at least some chord progressions that you can hum or mumble over, as I have been doing, maybe not so well, during this particular lesson. So practice, play around, make sure you have some method of writing some kind of song that you can take with you onto day one of the class. Good luck, and I'm excited to hear your songs.